That's hilarious.
It's too funny. Yeah, he's like, he almost sat there and goes, I got Karen who's sit here.
I don't know. Yeah, I thought, oh, I should just make it so that you can't see me either, but I'll probably see me.
You are the person looking for that.
Yes. It's kind of weird. I have to think about that too. Yeah, so I I told the gal who's the professor, I was like, well, it's not really going to be a video of me teaching because I don't teach. We talk, and we talk about a subject, and it'll be interesting to see like how, I don't know how to compare to what other people are doing, but I like
Are you watching like everyone?
I don't think I get to see everybody, so, but
Do they get to see yours?
I don't think so. We just turn it into her on. She has a.
Oh, well, I don't care if it's his now. It's just her.
There you go. Come sit over here, George.
He doesn't like this chair.
No, this chair makes me feel the same. Well, I'm like this.
You know,
sitting
hey,
back.
when you're a woman and you're my age, you want to look tiny. That's just how it is. So that's funny. Yeah, that's a huge chair. That's Ryan. That's Garrett's.
Curly.
That's Garrett's chair, actually. So, anyway, so how was your week?
I was scared.
Seriously?
Where?
It was fun. It was sort of busy, you know, it's just normal.
Okay.
It was warm. There was guys in their t-shirts, so I was scared.
So how was the snow then?
Oh, it was pretty good. It wasn't slushy. It was
Oh,
kind
okay.
of crystally.
And do you ski or snowboard?
I ski.
Oh, so then that was better.
Okay.
My cousin went snowboarding at the Mount Edge. It was crazy, the busy with the lines, and then it's been so sunny that it had like a sheen of ice on the snow, so it wasn't very good for snowboarding.
Yeah, once you get too close, it's, you know, it's almost like there's a path. There's some trees on the side, so if you get too close to those, it's kind of really just like it's all this ice.
I get freaked out if I'm skiing and I hear the sound of ice. Like, you know how much like, you know, every time you turn, that just, I don't know, it makes me, you don't ski?
I
Have you
so
skied?
going downhill.
You have? Elon, have you skied?
Yeah, but I haven't seen it in a long time.
Yeah, we haven't gone in a long
I
time.
haven't either in a long time. So,
It's pretty fun.
it is fun. I actually prefer downhill versus cross country, because cross country seems like just way too much work.
Cross country is more for like exercise than fun.
Yeah.
Well, I think some people think it's
Well,
really
it's
fun
fun,
because
yeah.
it's scenic,
Yeah.
it's not hiking, but it's
Maybe like fun, but you know,
No
it's
thrill.
not that.
it's not a thrill, that's right.
That'd be my thing. I like snowshoeing.
Snowshoeing?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that just sounds like a lot of work too.
Yeah. I hate the chairlift because I hate heights.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I hate like going downhill on a bike, so why would I want to go downhill on skis? I remember my boyfriend's like, oh, it's a really social thing. I was like, yeah, we talked for like the 5 minutes, and then you go do your thing, and I'm on my own. I'm like, this is no fun.
I remember the first time, so Jeff is the
You
one
didn't go skiing?
taught
I
me
went
how to
once.
ski.
I hated it.
Because he knew how to ski, and I had never skied,
Yeah.
so I think I was like 21.
Yeah, that's
And,
not over.
you know, like, the first time you get on the lift, you really don't know what is up at the top. Like, I had absolutely no idea what you do or how to get off the chair. Or
Getting off is so stressful.
yes, and so I was totally freaking out. And so
the chairs move, and then
yes,
the next chair.
yes, and
you
so
go
It's
down.
not that bad. You just
No,
you have
I-
your poles up and your skis up and you're
I
know what you're
know,
doing.
easy to say, but when you've never even seen it or anything, I totally had no idea. And so, you know, I can see it's like, oh, you have to
You watch
ski down.
people
Like
in
there's
front
a
of you.
there,
They
and
do that.
And you don't know what you're doing at all.
I literally like grabbed onto Jeff and made both of us fall,
Oh, no.
like right there. So, and then it was up at Hoodoo, and it was warm, but it was raining, and I had blue jeans on.
Oh.
So I wasn't really dressed for it. I fell all the time because that was my very first time. And I literally thought, why do people pay money to do this? This is awful.
We had snow pants. and,
This
like,
is
Yeah,
horrible.
snow pants and stuff, so.
But if you don't go, you
I
would those things.
know.
It's expensive to invest in.
Well, yeah, that was my
Yeah.
totally like very first time. And I was just like, okay, I'm not gonna pay money to do this anymore. But, you know, but he's a really good teacher. Jeff is a really good teacher,
It's hard
and so,
to go with a significant other and have them teach you anything.
yeah, so, no, he's really, he taught me how to, like, he taught me how to water ski, even though I'm terrible at it. I prefer to kneeboard. But, huh? What's kneeboarding? It's just a little board, like a little.
It's like snow tubing, pretty much. Easy.
Yeah, and you just sit on your knees, and so you don't have to. It doesn't require a lot of balance, and you get pulled behind the boat, and you can go out, you know, in and outside of the wake. And
Okay.
Oh, I've held on to a raft. Yeah, not a raft. Sorry, not a raft.
Were you
Like
standing up or kneeling?
A tube. We were sort of, we were
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
holding on, and they were driving around on the boat.
Kneeboarding doesn't give you the rash on the sides of your legs. We used to get that, the tube rash when we go tubing.
Yeah, I don't enjoy tubing. Have you ever done
I've
tube?
gone tubing, but I didn't get a rash.
Well, we were little, we would sit, two of us would sit in the tube,
Yeah.
and so when you rub your legs, just rub against the sides of the tube.
Yeah.
We would just like, your
There's
whole
this like
thighs
shit.
would rash.
It's like there's the sharp edges.
Yeah, that's just the way the material was, but.
Yeah.
Or the
laying on-
seam, like
it's
the
like
seam of the,
yeah. Yeah, we would lay on top, and that's way better.
I don't know. Anyway, yeah, Jeff was a good teacher, but I have not very good balance and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Regular water skiing was not. I tried like, oh my goodness, I don't know how long to get up on one ski.
Oh.
Oh,
I
I
did that long
never.
ago,
I did
too.
like for 10 feet and then fell. But so I just stuck with kneeboarding. But snow skiing, you know, I got to where I was pretty good, but then I think one of the last times I did, I think I've done it once or twice, but I hurt my knee going down the lift line, which is always like the hardest skiing, and it was at the end of the day, and I fell, and I was going down the really moguly part, you know, like, and I fell, and Jeff was long gone, like, he was way in front of me. He talked me into going down that way, and then he left me, and so I'm just laying there, I'm like, I don't want to call the ski patrol, like, you know, I really don't want to do this. And it did, yeah. And so this guy yells down, I'm underneath the lift line, like they're just, you know, all these people are going up the, you know. So this guy's like, hey, do you need any help? And I was like, you know, stuff, no, I'll be fine. And then Jeff is riding up the lift line, because I think he's going to come find me. He's like, hey, honey, how's it going? I was like, get down here. Get down here right now. So he skis down, and he helps me kind of like get over to the side, because I just needed to get like out of the moguls. And then literally I pointed my skis straight down, and I stood up. As long as I didn't have to twist my knee, it was okay. I stood up and I skied straight. Like I skied straight down to the lodge, like all the way up to where you take your skis off, and that was it. I was like, I am so done. But you know why it happened? Because it was at the end of the day, I was tired, and I had no business being on that run. It was like, it was way too hard for me. So,
I was in the lodge probably eating and drinking and reading a book.
yeah, you know, probably if I was going to go skiing again, I could probably ski half a day, and then I'd be reading and enjoying some hot chocolate in the lodge for the afternoon. That would be my idea of a great day.
When we went skiing, we skied pretty much the whole day.
Mm-hmm.
It was pretty fun. I think most of the time it was really good, but this one time the weather was really weird, and so the inside of our goggles fogged up, and it was also foggy outside.
Yeah.
And so I remember I was on this run, and my teacher, my instructor, because we were taking ski classes, was wearing like bright blue, and I could just see this blue blob, and he was just like, okay, I know, I've memorized this run, just follow my coat and see if you can make it down. So I couldn't see my feet, I couldn't see my hands in front of my face, I just saw this blue blob, and I was like blindly going.
That's trust.
That is
just
trust.
terrifying.
That's amazing.
But I made it, I didn't fall over, so
Wow, that is a really good example of trust.
I don't know. It's just one of the times when we were at Snowmass. Or not Snowmass, not Hood. Timberland Lodge.
Oh.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good story. Like,
It's scary.
right?
Yeah. Well, I went night skiing once, I think, at Timberline.
Did you have like a headlamp thing?
Well, they had lights, the
Yeah,
roads
they
were
have-
lit.
that's what I'm
Oh,
talking
okay.
about.
But
Nice.
you know what I learned about that? Like, your depth perception at night is really different. And so I had a lot more trouble because it's just hard to tell, like, how big, for me, it was hard to tell how big the moguls were that you were trying to go over because your depth perception, mine wasn't as good at night. So I think I only did that once. It was a little too out of control for me. Yeah, it was not my thing. So, Sarah and Emily are downstairs helping again. I don't know where
They were
Sarah.
sick.
No, they're downstairs.
Oh, they are. Oh.
Yeah, they're downstairs helping, which is great.
Yeah.
They're actually interested in continuing doing something after the worship gathering sometime. So, I don't know if you guys are open to that, if you want to keep going. George, that would just mean you'd have to come back later instead of 11, like coming back at like noon if you wanted to.
Okay.
So, but I'll let you guys know because Natalie's going to be, are you going to be moving pretty in March? Do you know where?
March, April, South Carolina.
You are going to go. Okay.
Yep.
She's
Got nothing else other than there. It's like, all right.
okay.
I started my job this week, so I've been training.
Okay. And the job is going to be continuing in South Carolina. No.
I hope so. That's where I don't know when I'm going to move because
Okay.
I don't know if I can move it
Mm-hmm.
or how easy it would be to transition in. But it's working from home remote, so. We'll see.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So she's going to be moving away. So anyway, we've been talking about like God's word and we've been talking about prayer. And so today, I thought, oh, this is really funny. We're going to talk about evangelism, which I don't know about you guys, but to me do you know what that is, George? Evangelism? It's where you share about your faith, what your faith is. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that. But for me, that was like a 4-letter word. I did not like that topic because I never felt like I was very good at it. And I think I was sort of raised at a time where your goal, if you were going to share about your faith, was to get people to pray the prayer to accept Jesus. And so that felt very pushy to me. And so I really shied away from it. I just don't, I don't like that concept. And so I just thought, oh, it's kind of interesting that was a topic that would come after reading the scripture, praying, because you get to know God better when you talk about Him. Like when you have, like I know just even preparing, to hang out with you guys and some of the other stuff I've had to do for class, like when I have to teach something, I learn so much more. So that whole idea about talking about God, and that's how we learn about Him, just kind of clicked. It's like, oh, it makes sense. That is kind of how you learn something, is when you have to teach it. Like when you have to present something for a class. If you can verbalize it and share it, then you actually know it. So, okay, so the question is, what is the last thing you did, watched, or listened to that you couldn't wait to tell other people about? Might be a movie. I mean, could be.
Is it watched? Did?
Huh?
Watched or
It said watched, yeah.
But was it like something you did?
Yeah.
Oh.
You did something, last thing you did, or you watched, or you listened to that you were like, I can't wait to tell somebody about this thing.
Skiing.
Yeah.
Skiing, yeah, okay, so something fun, like, yeah, skiing. I'm trying to think.
I had a really cool band last night. They had like a drummer and 2 percussionists and a keyboard player, and they were like banging on drums. It was really cool. Very exciting.
Cool. Yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to think of something.
I know. It's like, well, did I think the new Star Wars movie was like so awesome that I just couldn't wait to tell somebody about it? No. It was a Star Wars movie. It was good.
I liked it, yeah.
Yeah, it was good, but like, you know,
Most
did I need to
people
go
I
tell my
know
mom? No.
Already saw it. I just told I couldn't tell my dad about it, couldn't tell very many people because they hadn't seen it. But,
Right. I think I did watch and tell people about the newest Jumanji movie because it was so different than the first one. If you ever saw the first one, it was really creepy.
yeah,
and
the first
scary.
one was pretty, like...
It was really dark and really scary because, yeah, I know I probably shouldn't have let my children watch it. Probably
I don't know, I
traumatized.
watched it when I was pretty young.
Mhm.
It wasn't like... It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
Like the bats coming out of the game in the beginning
Mhm.
kind of freaked me out. Like,
Yeah,
what?
right.
And then like finding this finding this game in like a dirt wall
Mhm.
in this construction site, that kind of like, what?
Yeah.
I didn't really understand the
Yeah.
reading the signs and what
It was
year and
weird.
stuff.
Yeah, it was a very strange movie and kind of creepy. This one was sort of strange, but not scary and very funny. Like it had a lot more comedy in it, and so that was fun. But I don't know,
It was very different. It was like the idea was like a video game. And
Yes,
someone put
yes.
into this video game, he was just put into this like
yeah,
world.
So, yeah. You guys think of anything that comes
Well,
to mind?
the thing that comes to my mind. So in my AP Bio class, science has always been easy for me up to this year because it's AP.
Yes.
And so my brain, the way I had wired it was, oh, I don't need to focus on science. That's easy for me. I need to focus more on areas that I struggle in, like math, or social studies, stuff like that, where I need to study more for them because they're harder for me. But I guess I never taught myself that, hey, AP Bio is hard. You need to study for it too. And so, like this whole semester, I've just been kind of studying the night before the test and, not doing that great on my tests. And I had like a low A for the entire semester until the final. And the final was really, really hard. And it had questions that we didn't even cover in class. So I was pretty upset about it. But I did really horribly. And so my grade, while she didn't enter it in, I calculated it, and it would be a B. And I have a 4.0. And I really do not want to have it ruined because I was stupid and didn't study for the tests. And so I did test corrections, and I wrote up like 15 pages of corrections, why each answer in the multiple choice was incorrect and why the one answer was correct, with references to my textbook and websites. And I did a ton of research, and I worked really, really hard. And my teacher raised my grade to an A.
Wow.
I was really happy about that.
Wow.
What's wrong with the B though?
Nothing's wrong with a B.
Well,
It depends on who you are.
Yes.
Okay, here's the deal though. Like, I worked
Absolutely.
really hard for the past 2 years to have a 4.0 and have all A's. And so getting a B and having that lowered would be kind of depressing after all of that work.
Right.
So
That's
that's
how you
why
get to
it matters.
college, and then high school grades don't matter, and then when you leave college grades don't matter. You kind of realize it only matters when you're in it. I remember I had one B that ruined my 4.0 in
Oh,
high
Me
school.
too.
It was my first year.
Me too.
Yeah,
But I
but
got a B in geometry or something, and then that was it.
yeah, it was English.
So.
My first year.
So,
English.
and look, we're still alive.
yeah.
It's okay.
It's true.
But I totally
I do remember.
Yeah,
It was painful. Yeah, you didn't
we
want
totally
it, but,
relate to that.
but at the same time, you do know.
Did I
nothing
work?
wrong with a B.
Did I go through the geometry book and write a 15-page thing about?
No.
I clearly didn't care that much.
Yeah, I spent a lot of winter break with you.
Oh my
Oh,
God.
that's
Well,
rough.
that's impressive. That is really impressive.
A lot of pressure.
I'm glad did you know ahead of time that they were going to raise it? Like they
I
would?
thought,
They
okay,
would
I thought
respond
based
well?
off of my test corrections, the way I calculated it, and I might have calculated it wrong. The way I thought it would be is that with the test corrections and an extra assignment, I would have an 89.9.
Oh, yes.
And I was like,
round up, please.
Usually they do.
But yeah, I actually ended up with a 91.6. So she must have given me extra credit. I don't know.
I'd give extra credit for all that work during Christmas.
We have this website called Pinnacle.
Oh, Pinnacle, that's what we used, yeah.
I don't like Pinnacle. It annoys me. You know, my dad sees Pinnacle because he's signed in and he likes it. So, just kind of, I don't really like it that he can see my grade every single day. I don't have bad grades, you know. I had 1 C in the first semester. That was annoying. But it was a 79.
Okay. Yeah.
Barely a B.
Yeah,
But it
almost.
wasn't.
I love how like the color coding works. Like
Yes.
A's are green,
Okay.
and B's are like this yucky
Like
yellow green,
Green.
and then C's are yellowish,
D's
and
are-
D's are like orange, and F's are red.
Oh,
Wow, that makes it real harsh. Everything about
B
about
is
you is
bad.
great because you're still passing and you're
Do you
still
remember?
incompetent.
The B looks bad.
I know the
It
B looks
sounds bad.
horrible.
Yeah, the A.
It's funny how colors really do that.
Hilarious. So do you remember, Natalie, the whole thing about like we don't want to use red pens because
Oh, yeah.
red is bad, and now they're just putting it online where F's are red? Like, oh,
Yeah, they use their whole,
clearly
all the teachers only
clearly,
use
yes,
blue or green
yeah,
and never
you know,
use red.
yeah.
Would hurt your feelings.
Yeah, because red will make you feel bad.
All of the literature teachers at
So-
school use purple. It's like a literature teacher thing. They all use
Oh,
purple
okay.
pens. I
Yeah,
don't know why.
because it's not red.
And then like a lot of other teachers will use green.
Right.
Yep.
Actually, the science we uses gold.
Yeah. They notice they don't use red, but I think that's hilarious that the F's are red online.
And D's. The D's
Like-
that actually like they
Yeah,
look
it's
kind of
like
reddish.
it's
Yeah.
like getting your attention, like woo.
I don't like the idea that you can see it at all times. Like, there's something with the anonymity of not, working towards the not being constantly aware of how good or bad you're doing. I don't know.
I kind of like it because then you can
Weird.
like strategize on like what you want to do. Like
Yeah.
for me, like for instance, this week I had a lot of tests, and so like I used to have a 97 in French, and then I had a 95 in A-push, and so I was like, okay, I have a higher grade in French, which means I don't have to study as much for those tests. Well, I should probably study more for
She has
it.
well thought this out.
Yeah,
Ilana,
so-
do you spend your time strategizing like that?
No, well,
She's just brilliant, so she doesn't have
Oh,
to.
she-
my dad is really mad at me because I had an 89.9 in my engineering course because I forgot to turn something in.
Oh.
Probably more than
He's like, why are you bringing
They don't
it up?
have-
Stop stressing.
They had engineering courses in high school?
Wow.
We don't
So
have
now it's a
that.
90.5.
Nice. Good job, you did
Living
it.
on the edge.
We don't have this.
Fine.
No.
You know, yeah.
Okay, it works.
I think in high school they do. They have the point. Yeah. You just get that.
I do hate how the way the math works with Pinnacle, because in math I had just like constant A's,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had 1 D in the beginning, and suddenly that turns it all into like a low B,
Yeah,
Oh,
that's how it
that
works.
and it makes me like, why? I've done A's. a ton.
Yep, that's
I've done
exactly
A's,
how it
but
works.
the D kills it.
That's why when you get into college and you get a D fall term your freshman year,
It's really hard
in
to get out of that,
music,
sure.
which is what I did,
Oh,
because I didn't like the class and I didn't like the professor, and so I just didn't
That makes
go
it
to
really
class.
hard.
And so I got a D in music theory, fall term my freshman year, and it took me the rest of my college time to raise my GPA. Because it all averages in, just like that, it just like takes down everything else, and you gotta work it all. But by the time when I got into my major, my junior year, then from that, like, I had a 4.0 in my major, but, it was just that
Put all
dumb,
of it together.
that dumb first
I
class.
care about classes where the teachers are bad and this material doesn't interest you.
You know, when you're like, I think it was fall term my freshman year, and so it was kind of like, oh, I'm out on my own, I'm going to figure out what life's about, and I kind of had this attitude of like, well, I'm paying for this, and I thought he was rude, and he was actually quite demeaning. He was not he was just, he was critical, like, not in a constructive criticism kind of way. And so, like, we would go and we had a piano recitation, and I had no piano background. So I just played flute. That was it. And so I can basically only read treble clef.
Yeah, you gotta learn the
Suck at
bass
reading
clef.
bass clef. And so, and so we'd have to come in, and most of the other people had more piano background, but even some of them didn't. But he was just so mean, and he'd be like, my 3-year-old can play this better than you.
Why would you be playing something
You know.
music theory?
Because you have to practice, because you practice what the theory is. Yeah,
Not just-
you have to practice
not
it.
like theory.
Yeah, to be
Theory
serious,
is-
it's applied theory.
Oh, that's,
You
yeah,
know,
applied
so you have to
theory.
do it. You know, you have to figure it out. And so, yeah, so it'd be like, my 3-year-old could play this better than you guys. And I was like, and in
Wow.
my mind, I was like, you know what, I'm paying for this. Like, we're paying to take this class, and so I don't really need that. So I just didn't go. And consequently, I don't need. So there you have it. So don't do that. When you get to college, don't skip class.
My dad's basic class. My last name's Brown, so it's George Brown does forget a lot.
Oh, yes.
So then, you know, he changes that out of the F to a different thing.
Yeah. There's all sorts of tricks. So, okay, so back to talking about our faith, which I think is something. Here's the question: why does the idea of talking about our faith make us nervous? You should have thinking of it.
Well, I think our society in general, like, at least I get the feeling that people are very prejudiced against Christians. And so if you say that I'm a Christian, this is what I believe, people will immediately, at least in my experience, people will immediately judge you. People will immediately not feel as comfortable around you because they think that you're judging them. And I think it has almost like a negative around it. I don't know how to explain it.
Like, yeah, like for example, Mormons, they walk around, you know, and just try to get people to want to do their religion too. And you know, I noticed that my dad and my stepmom just don't like it. They find it annoying. So we have to be they just feel like they're trying to convince you to do something like fun, and then like suddenly you join their group.
Yeah, I think people are afraid of manipulation.
Really, I feel like they're just trying to get you to want to, you know, believe in the same thing.
Yeah. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I guess it's kind of a fear of rejection, of losing friends. I already can't carry on a normal conversation with almost anyone.
So it's, just general communication is harder, so sounds like the thought of communicating about something as important as your faith is like, really scary. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. There is a verse in 1 Peter that says this: always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you, to give the reason for the hope that you have, but do this with gentleness and respect.
Yeah. Gentleness and respect, that is so important. Like, I don't know. I feel like sometimes, I think that's the most important part for me, for evangelicalism. Like, you can't just go up to someone and say, hey, you have to believe what I believe because what you believe is wrong.
Right.
Like, that just angers people. It makes them afraid.
Right.
So I think building up a relationship with someone first and like, being respectful of what they already believe, even if it's wrong, is important.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right on.
Yeah, sometimes I try to, when I talk to my friends, I try to just, you know, not like push church stuff off to the side. You know, I just sort of do that because then it doesn't like cause a fight. Like somebody will be like, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And then suddenly your best friend's arguing with you because they don't, you know, because they don't believe what you believe. And I know a lot of people who don't.
Right,
church,
right.
So.
Yeah.
Like that might annoy them. Like, you go to church? No, I don't. And they're like, and then I sort of feel like maybe they just don't want. They just don't. They find it annoying when people ask them that.
Yeah. I think for me, when I think about that verse, the thing that sticks out is to give the reason for the hope that you have. And so one of the things that this lesson really tries to bring out is the idea that the only thing, I guess the say the only thing, but one of the most important things that you can speak about is what your faith means to you, your personal part, not like your idea that, oh, you know, you have to convert somebody or know, especially I think one of the things that always taught me was like, well, what if they ask a question I don't know the answer to? And so that would kind of be a barrier. Like, well, if they ask me something about, you know, I mean, people throw up all sorts of things like, you know, well, why is there evil in the world? You know, well, God is, you know, in control of everything, then why does he allow this or whatever, you know? And there are a lot of things you're just like, because he's God? I mean, you know, you're just like, I don't really know if I know how to answer that, and so then it stops you. But I love this verse because it's the reason for the hope that you have, like what has been your personal experience. And so part of that is then you have to think through, like, what is your personal experience? What do you have to share about why Christ is important in your life? Like, what would you say? And so it's interesting, it has this illustration in here about, you know, let's say your family goes to the Grand Canyon. And, you know, like for summer break or something. And so when you get back, usually your friends are going to be like, hey, how was your trip to the Grand Canyon, you know? And, you know, unless it was really horrible, like it was so hot, you know, you couldn't breathe or whatever, you know, for the most part, you're going to be like, oh, you know, it was great, we did this and we did this. And your friends don't want to know what somebody else's, they don't want you to tell, like, somebody else's experience in the Grand Canyon. They want to know what, like, your experience was when you went to the Grand Canyon. And so, I thought that was a really good illustration. It's like, okay, well, if your friends ask about, like, well, why do you go to church? Or why do you think the Bible is the Word of God? Then really, the thing that's most important for you to be able to talk about is what your experience is with it. I thought that was really a good reminder, I guess. And so that this thing, the bottom line is you don't have to know everything to share something. I thought that was a really, like, oh, I could probably remember that. I don't have to know everything to be able to share something. And the something is really like, what has God done in my life? And I love what you said, though, Isabel, about the gentleness and respect. And especially in this society today. Because if you are on social media right now, there is not a whole lot of gentleness or respect. Oh, no. So, I feel like, man, if we can even respond to people with gentleness and respect, it's like going to be such a light bulb. It's going to be so different than what you see just in general, because so many people are just, it's so hateful right now. Even in, I mean, it must be that way in school. Like, there must be a lot of stuff. Okay, I want to move. So, if somebody were going to ask you why do you have faith in God? Like, what would you, this is kind of like an on-the-spot question. And it's okay to say, hey, you know what, I'm still exploring my faith, like I don't really know, like what I believe. That's a totally fair answer, because everybody's at a different place. But if somebody were going to ask you, like, hey, you know, what do you think about God and why do you believe that? What do you think you would say? Like,
There was a speaker I like to listen to, and he had a class, and he was saying, okay, you kids over here who believe in God, tell these kids over here who don't believe in God why being a believer is so great, and you try to convince them otherwise. But you can't use, you go to heaven when you die. You know, what's so great about believing in God here?
Wow.
It really makes you go, it really is so great. You know, it really puts a different perspective. Kind of, you know, heaven's great, but we're still here.
right.
You know, same problems.
Huh, yeah. So we can't play the eternity card.
Can't play the eternity card.
Well, I think for me at least, this this world is so, like, broken. It's so bad. And, like, people, I'm broken, you're broken, everybody cannot, nobody's perfect. You can't expect that at all. But God is. And He will love you, like, no matter what. And that's incredible. Like, no other person can do that.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I mean, that whole, the security of knowing that God has provided a way for you because He loves you. I think that's great. I mean, you know, people need to know that God loves them when it doesn't. Yeah, it just looks, love looks really broken right now in our society. So, yeah, that's really good. That's really good. Okay. There's a question here, I'm not sure. It says, what's one way that you've seen God work through you or around you? Interesting question. So, well, first, maybe I'm going to back up. Have you had any experience, like at school, where you've been able to talk about God or share your faith? And once? And how can you describe that for us?
It was when my whole class took a trip to Washington, D.C. in 7th grade. One of my friends was sad because her grandma died, or one of her relatives died, and she didn't know where her relative was. So,
Yeah. Wow, that's cool. So you were able to get some comfort and, that's awesome.
What school did you go to Washington, D.C.?
Franklin.
I don't think that's jaw.
You don't think you're school? Don't a lot of 8th grade classes go to Washington, D.C.?
A lot of 8th grades usually.
They didn't at San Diego, but yeah, Franklin always goes to Washington, D.C., don't they? Every year they have a trip that goes there. Yeah. Okay. Huh?
With all the other millions of kids that go at the same time.
Right.
Was it busy?
Overrun by 8th graders.
It's kind of funny because we were all wearing this really bright red. It was kind of like our uniform. And so whenever we were getting on the metro, it was just like this sea of red just going in.
I was so sick of red after that trip. Like, I would not wear red. I did not like seeing the color red because it was so present.
Everybody had red. That's funny.
I kind of felt bad for all the other pedestrians.
Yeah, they're just swallowed up by red.
Choose green or blue.
You need something that doesn't represent an S.
But you need something that stands out. Yellow, bright yellow.
Yeah, it stood out so that
Yeah.
teachers could see where people were.
Right.
and stuff.
Right, yeah. There's a method to their madness. What about either of you? Have you ever had a chance to just talk about God at school or?
My freshman year of high school, one of my friends who I was getting to know, I don't even remember what we were talking about, but she kind of out of the blue asked me why I was a Christian, why I believed that. And I was kind of flustered by the question. I wasn't sure how to answer it.
Yeah.
So I just said, I can't imagine how the world could come to be without a creator.
Right.
Without someone creating it, because it's so complex.
Right.
And she was open-minded about it. She thought about it. She didn't go against me right away, which was nice.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I was pretty unprepared for that question, to be honest. I was why do I believe this?
I think we're often really unprepared for it. And that's why I like this verse, because it's always be prepared to give an answer to everyone who asks you to give the reason for the hope that you have. So again, it's not like you have to prove all this stuff that somebody else's experience shows them. It's why is it the hope that you have personally, and what has God done in your life personally? And then do this with gentleness and respect. And just to be able to key in on that, because it's just so, I have a difficult time when people are standing on the street corner yelling things and just wondering who responds comes to this, and yet, do people respond to it, and that's why people keep doing it? I mean, is there somebody who's going to respond?
Yeah.
As a Christian, it usually offends me.
Like, it just feels like that person is saying, I'm better than you, and because I'm better than you, I'm going to teach you how to be better.
Right. It's
I
very,
guess kind of, it doesn't feel right.
yeah.
I know that's not what they're saying, but to me, it kind of feels like
very
that's
yelly.
the message.
It's very yelly.
What do people say? I don't really.
Well, there are
Repent,
people
you're
that,
going to hell. We're all
It's a lot
sinners.
of, it tends to,
Megaphones usually.
yeah, it tends to come across as very non-relational, because you don't have a relationship with somebody you're standing on the street corner and yelling at, and it tends to come across as very judgy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I get we're all sinners. That's not like our fault. We ask for forgiveness. You know?
Right.
They're just wanting to share what they have.
They just
so
want
they're
to
just going
share the
about it in a
gospel,
way
and
that-
some people believe that you need to go out in a public place and just, preach the gospel, and God's going to do whatever He's going to do with it. And so, which is very true. Right. It doesn't really
That
feel.
doesn't sound very gentle or respectful.
Right.
But what the prophets did back in the Bible, I mean, they would go out into a town and say, repent, I mean,
Right.
so,
Right.
But, are they used
Are we
different?
called to be prophets like that, or are we called to be witnesses of what Christ has done for us? I suppose that God might.
Who knows?
Clearly, people who are doing that believe they've been called to do it.
Right.
But this is going to sound bad. This reminds me of the people that, the mattress land people. Yes, that's what it is. And I spend my time thinking, okay, I was thinking about buying a mattress today. I saw you standing there, and I'm going to buy a mattress now because you were standing there waving your mattressy thing. And the truth is, no, I'm not going to buy a mattress today because somebody's standing out on the street corner, and yet they are paying someone to stand out on the street corner. And I'm going to guess that they did some research that shows that it's worth paying somebody to stand out there in a costume and be dancing to get people to come in. So that's the kind of weird stuff, random stuff I think about when I'm driving around.
I don't get how mattress companies stay in business.
That's just mattresses last a pretty long time.
Yeah,
They do.
like people
It's
buy them
prices.
once every
Yes.
5 years, and then
Yeah.
you have to get the whole town to get one, and maybe that's and then
High margins, that's all it is.
Yeah. So it's funny that I think about that in terms of like somebody standing out on the street corner, but it's like, okay, are they standing out there, sharing the gospel because people do respond, and so they have found that that's like actually effective, when the truth is I haven't seen a lot of people responding, but
But if
no,
you
I have no
one
idea.
person, maybe
I
they
haven't
feel
done
like
the
it's effective.
exactly. So is it worth it for one person? But I still love this verse about, giving the reason for the hope that you have, but do it with gentleness and respect. Like, that's going to stick in my mind, that I just have to be ready to give that answer with gentleness and respect, and I don't have to have all the answers. And I don't even necessarily have to be able to speak that well. I just have to be able to say, here's what I've learned about God and how He's worked in my life. And the Holy Spirit can do what He wants with that in somebody's life. So I think for me, that was one of the, kind of freeing things, where I realized that no matter what I had heard when I was growing up, that my goal was to, if I was going to go out and share the gospel, that my goal was to try to get somebody to pray the prayer. Because really, that's what it was about. I'm not kidding. You think that's really what it felt like to me. That I was, because I'm an achiever, okay, and I want to know I'm doing a good job at something. So for me, that was like that, okay, I've not been successful unless they give their lives to Christ. And just realizing that God works, actually, I think statistically they say that it takes 7 times of somebody hearing the gospel in some way, shape, or form before they commit their lives to Christ.
So maybe you're planting the seeds.
Exactly. So I might be number
steps.
1 or number 2 before they get to 7. You know, that's kind of it's not hypothetical. I mean, it's not rigid, but it's that idea that it takes multiple times where, you know, it's just,
It's
and
hard to
people are
change
relational.
such a big part of your life like
Yes.
that. It's
Yes.
a commitment.
Yeah. Well, like, you'd have to listen to Ryan's message online. He kind of talked about that, you know. He talks about how he made the comment, George, do you remember him saying this about, because you were in the first service, right? Yeah. He said, you know, and he said this before, where it's like if somebody becomes a Christian, he wants to just sit there and tell them how hard it's going to be and punch him in the face. Because it's like, you know, you might as well figure out that it's hard. And so, yeah, it's hard for people to make that commitment that they're going to give their life to Christ and make a lot of big changes. Christ, but he does it. Like, it's not like we have to do it all ourselves. So, anyway. Okay, well, is there some way I can pray for you guys this week?
How did your Saturday go? Did you have 2 events?
Yeah. Wait, no, that's coming up, isn't it? You had a conflict.
Yours.
It's coming up.
Debate.
I was like, I think it's coming up.
Okay.
Did you figure out what you're doing?
Yeah.
What do you do?
Choose.
Oh.
And which one did you choose?
Choose the science.
Yeah.
That's in February though, right?
Oh, I thought it was closer up.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was thinking.
Yeah, I thought it was closer up. But
No, that was good.
it wasn't.
Is the debate and the science day the same day?
I hate when that happens.
It happens a lot this year now. I've been looking ahead at the schedules. And they even conflict with dance.
I know. Okay, this is a funny thing. So, our dance recitals, like they would always fall on the same day as Science
The
Olympiad,
same weekend.
or the same weekend. So
Yeah,
sometimes
yeah.
So the science Olympiad and then the next day.
yeah, you do Science Olympiad one day, then you'd be like exhausted, and then you'd go do dance, which is also very
You guys are
exhausting.
well-rounded.
You are
I love it.
That's what high school's for, right?
I guess,
Doing all the
yeah.
things.
So you just went from one to the other.
Yeah.
I don't like 1 event a day anymore.
That's crazy. That's really crazy. That's awesome. So you chose science, so it's all okay.
Which I actually need to work on.
Yeah.
Much. I have my old books and my notes and I printed off some, like, the guidelines for archaeology, and that's it.
It kind of reminds me of Devon one weekend. They had the science fair, and you know, Grant just try hard at all. So there's a bunch of teenagers. They're really bad kids, and they have this empty classroom in the back of the school, and they have all the science fair projects that were after they were done. Teachers just like throw them away, sort of, I guess, and they would get them, and they have the they